Alrighty, so go ahead and fill me in on Vinny here.
Alright, so Vinny is 7 months now.
Okay.
He's a mini Bernedoodle. Okay. And the reason why we're coming to you is, I mean, there's a few things, but I think biggest thing overall is a lack of obedience.
Sure.
Right? So we've been able to teach him basic commands. He knows leave it, he knows off, he knows sit, he knows stay, he knows down.
Okay.
But really, it's only when we have a treat that he listens.
Yeah,
And
he
then,
listens when he wants to.
Yep.
He
So
knows
not
the
when,
commands,
exactly. So not when we want him to. So as you can see, he jumps on people.
Excitement.
Hey, a lot of excitement
Sure.
when he meets new people.
Sounds like the dog that just came in right now. That was a dog that was barking.
Really?
Yeah, that's overstimulation stuff.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think there's just a lack of impulse control
Yep.
with him as well, right? So like when we're walking him on a leash,
Uh-huh.
he sees a squirrel, a bird,
Sure.
he starts, he also
Yeah.
kind of pulls at the leash and, more so walks us sometimes,
Sure,
which we don't like.
sure.
What else were we saying? We have a whole laundry list of
We have a lot, yeah, that, maybe, again, it's the jumping, it's the impulse control, overstimulus.
Oh, he also will when he doesn't want to do something, he will growl, bark back at us, snarl.
Uh-huh.
I actually have,
Kind of like a little attitude, like saying, screw off, like I'm not doing this, yeah.
Sure.
Kind of recognizing what we're saying, but him saying,
Don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it, yeah.
Sure.
like us trying to get the leash on him.
Sure.
He's got an attitude, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But overall, he really is not a malicious dog. He doesn't play bad with other dogs.
Sure.
He never bites, nothing like that. So I don't think he's malintentioned. I think he just is overly stimulated, and I think he has an attitude.
Yeah, and the goal here is honestly, it's like we have no trust or faith in taking him off leash at a park at this point.
Sure.
It's a pretty.
John tried to take him off leash at a park yesterday,
Mhm.
and we couldn't catch him. He ran all around.
Yeah.
He knocked over an old woman.
Yeah.
So we-
Tripped up on a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to be able to trust him off leash. We want to be able to have people come and watch him and not be like, oh, we have to watch this dog. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And general obedience
Okay.
is what we're looking for.
Sure. So go ahead and have a seat here.
Okay.
I'm gonna be right back. Let's get something real quick.
You're vocal, buddy. You're just vocal. Down. Getting down.
That's basically he saw everything. We don't want the jumping on the people.
Yeah.
The whining.
All right. So if he starts to get worked up again, I'm gonna grab him from you.
Okay.
Because the issue you're dealing with is definitely overstimulation.
Okay.
Yeah, someone just grab him real quick, and you can let your leash go. We might get a little bit of resistance and kind of bucking around. It's okay. So the obedience stuff is one thing. There we go. Behaviorally, like when you came in and he was kind of yappy and barking and stuff. Same thing that just walked out the door just before you had another client today was the first class.
Okay.
Man, you should have seen that dog at the beginning. He was just all over the place.
Wow.
So here, him whining, this is literally what just walked out my door right now. Is overstimulation cases the most common things that I get. Okay. Overstimulation is simply the lack of boundaries. Okay. And I know people they'll say oh, we're disciplining our dog. We tell them no and stuff like that. And they go yes, but you don't tell them no. No matter the dogs understand. So for instance. This whining here, if another dog didn't like the fact that he was whining, they would bite him. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with humans, they go oh, if your dog is whining for attention and it bothers you, either put them in a kennel for timeout or redirect them towards a toy or something.
Yeah.
And the problem is, if you redirect them, you're actually feeding into that.
Yeah.
Because he's going, I need stimulation, and you're well, here's this.
Yeah.
So then he's okay, if I ever need stimulation, I just do this, and then I get this.
Showing him it's a reward.
Correct. Or if we put them in the kennel, dogs aren't introspective. They don't think I shouldn't be whining or I shouldn't be barking because that's a bad thing. If anything, they bark or whine louder because now that energy can't go anywhere. because they're confined.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the most common thing that I see. So like right here, I'm just giving him very light tugs to disagree with his behavior. And I'm essentially capping the brain right now. So here, when the brain starts to get stimulated, because I'm wanting him to be in a stationary position, is if the brain wants to move and the body can't, then the brain starts to vocalize. So it's got to go somewhere.
Got it.
Okay. So here, as I handle him more, what we should see is like the consultation progresses, like he'll start to settle into like lay down and chill, because I'm not letting him escalate. Okay.
Right.
Whereas for most clients, they don't know how to address the dog appropriately or correctly, so then the dog ends up being all over the place.
Right.
Okay. So in the beginning, this is normal because I'm not actively communicating with another dog, like I'm not biting him, right? Because if I just came in and said whack, it's boom.
Done.
That's his language,
Yeah.
right? Here I'm using a leash to imitate his language, and this is not what I would teach you. This is just me knowing how to use my tools.
Right.
You know, the tool that I use is e-collar, which I'm assuming you guys did research. You're aware of what it is.
Yeah, we got glowing reviews from like 5 people.
All the people at the park
At the dog park that we've kind of socialized with and he plays with.
Yeah, Winnie the.
Oh, you're from there.
Yeah, yeah.
That was Milo.
Oh,
You ever
okay.
seen Milo?
Wait,
Yeah.
Milo is
The white.
Yes.
Yes,
I've seen Milo a few
Milo and Luna was
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
Like, so that whole crowd is basically
There you go.
Cool. Right, it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, we're kind of aware of the general practices.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll explain how e-collar works and why it's effective and all that stuff. So yes, Milo's a Trevor's dog.
Okay.
Okay, just walked out today, was his first class.
Okay.
So is what's the word? How would you the most common approach now is like positive only.
Yep.
treatment
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
right?
That's
As everyone
That's
goes-
what we tried to
That's
do.
what we subscribe to at
Yes.
first, and it hit a wall.
Yes, and you know, thankfully for you, you have a neighborhood of people who are like aware that this is very limited. It doesn't really work, right? So the problem with positive only is it's great for puppies under 6 months, real basic stuff, foundational stuff, for things that you want to see again. You know, like if I say sit, put your butt down.
Yep.
But it's terrible for like stimulation, because typically if a dog has food drive, they get more excited. So then you're just adding stimulation on top of stimulation, and then you have a bigger problem.
Yep.
That's exactly.
And it also, it's not good at stopping things.
Yeah.
Okay, so like for me, growing up, my mom would say like, hey, I'm taking away your allowance
Right.
until you get good grades, because I know what that means. Dogs don't. So if you're like, hey, you're not getting treats for the rest of the week because you misbehaved in Travis, you don't know.
Right.
That's not a punishment.
Right.
Okay. For dogs, punishment is an applied aversive at a particular moment, ideally when the dog is performing the behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're like right now, every time he whines, I'm actually correcting him.
Yeah.
I'm using the leash. I'm just giving light and firm tugs here
Right.
to just cap him every time. And I do this just like automatically because I'm so used to it.
Yeah.
Whereas most clients are so used to their dog whining that they ignore it.
Right.
So then it
Or
just keeps
console
happening.
him even.
Or console
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
We're just feeding into it.
Yeah, but
exactly, yeah.
Whining.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't
okay.
stop it. Yeah.
Correct. Another dog would bite them.
Yeah.
You know, dogs don't give each other treats. They don't give each other CBD or anything like that. They just bite each other. That's how they regulate each other.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, the most popular form of dog training is positive, and it makes people feel good
Yeah.
to think that they could fix something using only positivity.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not realistic even in the
Totally.
human world, right?
In practice, we would 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
We hit a wall when it's like, you know.
And for instance, like the positive reinforcement did work for under 6 months when we were trying basic
Mhm.
commands, but how is it gonna work to keep him not from running away from us at a park when he has all this freedom? It just
Correct.
isn't, it's
Yeah.
not feasible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where e-collar comes into play. So again, I'm not against positive only or
Yeah.
positive reinforcement. I cap it at 6 months because at 6 months, a dog or other dogs would treat him as an adult.
Right.
You would physically just see them address him as needed. Puppies, you know, they're a little bit more, how to say, patient with, because they know puppies, right?
Right.
But they still correct them if needed. The mom would still bite a 2-month-old puppy just like she would bite a 6-month-old puppy, but there would just be more of like, you know, an understanding like this is a really young, you know, being who doesn't understand these concepts
Right.
about an old puppy or dog, right?
Right.
So, for e-collar, it's the only tool that guarantees off-leash control. And even in the case of an emergency, if the dog were to take off or something, I can force the return if needed, if I really know how to use my tool.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, we think he's very stubborn.
Oh, it's
You would know a better impression, but he comes off as stubborn.
Yeah, no, it's all about patience, right? So, with the e-collar, it's the only tool that guarantees off-leash control. So for me, like, you know, we have positive only, we have prong collar, then we have e-collar. There's more in between, but those are the three most common ones. Is food only has the lowest ceiling. Okay, like in the single digits of percentage of success, because you have to have the right dog that's food driven, that doesn't care about the environment, right? You need all these other precursors in order for food to be super successful.
Right.
Prong collar is great for dogs when they're on leash and stuff, but when as soon as you remove the leash, there's still they go like, well, you don't have the means of making me return,
Right.
because you don't have that leash control anymore.
Right.
E-collar has the means on or off leash to make the dog comply.
Right.
So I go, why would I waste my time at these methods
Right.
if they have the lowest ceiling, and this one gets me the closest to 100% possible,
Yep.
as long as the owners do their homework, right?
Yep.
So like if you go to a doctor and he's like, hey, this has a 20% chance and this has a 99% chance of success, you want that. Like,
Yeah,
you don't want to deal with
You
this
don't want
one.
to do it fair.
We don't want to waste time.
Exactly. So, right off the bat with the e-collar, we can build up to off-leash control. Okay, it doesn't matter how old the dog is. I can even do it as young as 2 months, but the average person isn't going to have the skill set to be so nuanced with the e-collar, and they tend to feel bad anyways because it's a 2-month-old puppy. So I usually just tell people wait till they're 6 months, and then you can
Right.
press them as an adult, because even amongst themselves, that's when they start to be treated as adults.
Right.
Okay. How much control you achieve is dependent on how much you want. Okay. So the way my programs are broken up is I have 6, 9, and 12-week programs. Okay. Or I have 3, 6, 9, 12. 3 is for like people who have dogs that have leash reactivity, and they just care about addressing the leash reactivity.
Okay.
The 6-week is like I walk with my dog and I take my dog to the dog park. The 9-week is like I walk with my dog, go to the dog park, and go to restaurant patios. And the 12-week is I go hiking with my dog, I take my dog to restaurant patios, I go to the dog park, I go to Travis. You do a lot more.
Right.
Okay, so how much control kind of just is determined by, well, what does your life look like with Vinny in the future?
Right.
Okay, because I don't teach stuff that people aren't going to use.
Right.
So like most places, it's like we learn to sit, then we learn to down, and blah, 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 blah. Whereas I go, okay, there's the 2 things that every dog should know, which is heel, leash walking, and then the return to me.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 most important commands. Everything else is superficial, right? Because if you're walking to the dog park, it's heel. And if you're at the dog park and you need to return, it's come. That's like the most common things that people use.
Yeah.
We need those. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So then if you're wanting like, no, in the springtime, we'd also take Vinny with us to like a restaurant. We don't have to worry about, Vinny doing all this nonsense and pulling. Then they go, now you're in the 9-week range, because that's what that one's for. And then 12-week, of course, is we do everything with our dog. And he's going to be off leash a lot. We're going to be up at a cabin house at the lake and all this stuff. Then I go, then you need full off leash control.
Got
okay?
it.
Questions about any of that so far?
I don't think
Makes a lot of
so.
sense. No.
I think we probably fall in the 6 or 9 bucket.
Yeah,
Sure.
at this point.
Yeah, that's where most people fall. So when it comes to the overstimulation and the stubbornness, okay, the whining and the pining, like you can start to hear now, is gradually dying down, and then he's going to perk up again, and I'm going to address him, and it's going to be a little bit more of a gap, so right there, right? But I'm essentially being more stubborn than he is,
Yeah.
right? Is every time he starts to get stimulated and I cap him, right, I'm not letting him go to the next level.
Yeah.
Whereas for most dog owners, it's, I already tried this for an hour, I'm tired, I'm not going to do it anymore. He now wins.
That
Okay.
happens every day in our house.
Yeah.
He wins every time, so.
And that's why, you know, in the beginning, it's more work,
Right.
and I just cap, but then eventually he's like, all right, when I'm with Jesse, I can't go to this.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, because I'm winning all the battles.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, this is more nuanced. This is more technical skill, right? And like, I was having a conversation, and it's like being a parent to a kid, and you're like talking to someone, and you're like parenting your
Right,
kid at the same
right.
time. It's the same exact thing, okay? But people, because they don't have the technical know-how,
Yeah.
it's hard for them. E-collar removes all that, okay? Because everything's at the press of a button.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way this would work for him is the stimulation or the overstimulation and that craziness that was here would most likely go away once we teach the leash walking stuff. Okay, now I don't want you to think that the heel is what, like the obedience is what's fixing it. It's the discipline behind the obedience.
Yep.
Okay, it's the fact that, so think of the e-collar as a bite on a button. So every time he's doing something I don't want him to do, I'm biting him with the button. And when you remove options, because overstimulation comes from the lack of boundaries, right? So for him, the world is an option, like everything's an option.
Yep.
I want to sniff this tree, I want to pee on that piece of grass, I want to say hi to that dog, I want to jump on this person, right?
That is him.
Yeah.
It's option, 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 option. So the brain's like, so many options, what do I do? So now it's frustrated. But when you say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, the only thing left is this. Okay, because that's what I did earlier. I just said you can't sit there, so you can't do that, you can't sniff over there, you can't whine, you can't do this, you can't stand up. Then this
That's what
happens.
you're left with, yep.
Okay, so it's more important to tell him what he can't do than it is trying to teach him what to do.
Right.
Because I'm sure he knows how to maybe sit and give paw and all that stuff.
Yeah,
He knows
yeah,
all
he knows all
that.
the superficial.
Those are all the to-do things, right? But it's the don't do that's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay? So obedience and behavior with dogs, very different. They don't technically overlap. They overlap because of how we train. So if you're doing positive only obviously didn't fix the behavior aspect of it, right? Because there was no aversive, there was no don't do this.
Right.
Once we start to apply the aversive into the obedience, it's actually still not the obedience, it's the aversive that then starts to affect the behavior. So for Milo, at the beginning of the session, he came in very just overstimulated, very loud. I had to like kind of shout in order to get over his barking so I could talk to the owner to like give him the beginning stuff. And then as we progressed with the training, you start to see him calm down and quiet down, okay? Because he was getting disciplined and we were disagreeing with things.
Right.
So then they have their homework and ideally they're gonna come back in the week and I hope to hear like, Jesse, 70% of the issues have gone away. Because that's typically how it works with the e-collar.
Wow.
Is the reason why I start with the heel first is it fixes most problems. Okay, it's about 70% of problems right off the bat is just leash walking.
Wow.
Walking your dog in a calm, focused manner, disciplining them when they get out of line, giving them essentially teaching them how to turn off.
Yeah.
Because in order to pay attention to you and do what you're doing, they have to ignore everything else. And that's impulse control, which you had talked about earlier.
Right.
Okay. Essentially what I just did right now is also impulse control.
Right.
Don't do these things. Then I get this.
Right.
Okay. So people tend to put it on the dog.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll grow out of it. Oh, they'll settle down after 20 minutes. Oh, this. And they go, no, settle down right now. He could be you could have a 2-month-old puppy right now, but the same problem, I'll get him to do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Because it's a very simple concept. Just relax.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a video on YouTube, which is a great video. It's like it's a golden retriever mother who disciplines her puppies, and the guy's recording. You see like 8-10 puppies yapping and barking and stuff. They let the mom in. She comes in. They charge her. They're like probably around 2 months. They charge her to like nurse and stuff, and they're loud. And all of a sudden, you just hear her growling and start snapping at all of them. And then within like 30 seconds, they're all just chill, laying down, relaxed. Okay, so she went in there and she just decided, I don't like this energy, chill out.
You can't do this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, it's a puppy, they don't know any better. But they actually
do.
can. Yeah, they start this process very young.
Show them the better way. Yeah.
Correct, right? So as humans, so I don't mind that people treat their dogs kind of like their family.
Right.
It's that they treat them like babies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Babies have no motor skills. Babies have no concept of right or wrong, right? So if like my aunt, whenever her kids growing up, when there was an infant, ripped an earring out of her ear. And she was very upset because it hurt, but could not do anything to the baby because the baby doesn't understand what it did was wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Dogs have a learning capacity, even at as young as 2 months, of a 3 to 4 year old child. Okay? And he will forever be a 3 to 4 year old child, by the way. Okay? Because people also have this concept of, if you train my dog, or if I train my dog well enough, my dog should choose to be a good dog. Dogs don't make proactive decisions.
Right.
They make reactive decisions. Humans are proactive. You can decide one day, like, hey, you know what? We've heard good things about this trainer from our neighbors. Let's contact him.
Yep.
Right? You're proactive about the decision. I can wake up one day and decide, hey, I should lose these quarantine pounds. That's a proactive decision.
Yep.
He doesn't do that. He doesn't think, like, you know what? They taught me the way of the good dog. I'm going to choose to be a good dog. He's going to behave with what you give him. Okay? So if you start putting discipline and rules and you're always reinforcing that stuff, he's going to respond accordingly and be that dog.
Right.
But if you give freedom and no rules, he's going to choose to be that dog.
Yep.
Okay, so you can always start training, and then you stop it, and all of a sudden, old dog comes back.
Yep.
Okay, because he's responding according to what's going on at the time. So for humans, we have laws, traffic laws. That's the most common example I give to people. It's because then when we talk about e-collar, everybody always wonders like, when does it go away? Right? That's like the first thing, or the most common question I get is, when does the e-collar go away? And I tell them, when you need it, it doesn't. So like all the dogs at Trebs, right? Nash, and I'm sure you'll see them with the e-collars on.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, and they finished their training a while ago, right? And it's because even as humans, we have laws and prisons and judges and jails and cops. People still commit crimes.
Yep.
Right? So, would you guys drive?
Yeah.
You go on the expressway?
No.
You don't?
Well,
Have you
we
been-
do-
I think
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Okay.
You've been on this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, of course.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
I mean, generally, a few
Okay.
degrees over. Yeah.
So most people don't go the speed limit. I think we can agree on that, right? Every now and then you get that person who does, and then you're mad at that person because then they're going too
Yeah,
slow.
yeah.
Right? So right there, we know better. And even we press the boundaries because we know there's no threat of consequence. If there's no squad car, if there's no camera, there's no ticket. So I'm gonna go 80 and 70.
Yep.
Okay? Same thing for dogs. When the e-collar is present, and when a cop is a cop on a collar, he's gonna behave himself. He's gonna listen to those rules, right? When the collar is off, he's gonna press boundaries a bit. Okay? It's just the way of the world. It's called opportunistic behavior. Okay? So I don't understand why people, ourselves, we don't obviously listen to rules that well, but they expect their dog to.
Right.
Right? Because we actually are aware. Like to him, he's not meant to be in a home, he's not meant to be kenneled, he's not meant to be on a leash, he's not meant to be collared up or anything like that, right? He's not even meant to look this way. He's meant to be a coyote, a wolf, a dingo, or whatever. But humans have created this through, genetic manipulation. He's not aware of these rules. He's not aware that it's a bad thing to pull.
Right.
Or it's a bad thing to like jump on
And we
people.
act like he should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So my job, of course, is to educate you like, no, this is how dogs actually work, but then this is how we get that kind of middle ground.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just requires that you have to talk his language,
Yeah.
right? So like right now, he was relaxed for like 5, maybe 8 minutes, and then he started to get stimulated again.
Yep.
And instead of waiting for this little pine to become the craziness, right off the bat, I'm disagreeing with it.
Yep.
That makes it easier for both him and I, right? Because it's much harder to correct him when he's at a 9 to 10 than when he's at a 2 to 3.
Yep.
Okay, I get more with less work in this stage than I did at the later stage.
Right.
Okay, so with the e-collar, with this guy, first thing I cover is leash walking, and we see what does this fix. Okay, I'm expecting like everything that I saw coming in, all that kind of nonsense and stuff, would be corrected because there was just too many options.
Do you
Okay,
think even the jumping?
the jumping is its own thing.
Okay.
So technically, jumping isn't the problem.
Got it.
What's the problem?
Over-stimulation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, or excitement. Right?
Yeah.
Either work.
Yeah.
So like, let's say dogs. You ever had a dog that had nervous piddles? They pee when they get pet or something like that.
I've seen
it,
one
yeah.
before, yeah.
So typically, it's for puppies. They get excited, right? Because they don't really have a good idea of impulse control. They get excited, and then someone comes in and goes, "I love this cute puppy," right? And they get more excitement, and the puppy goes, "I'm so excited I can't control myself," and they pee.
Yeah.
So then, people always ask, how do we fix this? Our puppy is not potty training. Like, that's not about potty training. That's about impulse control.
Yep.
So I go, if your guest is greeting your dog excitedly, tell your guest to ignore the puppy, because now there's not anything to push the puppy over the edge.
Right.
So that actually comes down to the human, right? Because humans, unfortunately, have learned or think it's okay to not have impulse control when it comes to other people's dogs, right? They just go down and start touching them.
Yep.
And I don't agree with that. You should ask for permission to pet anyone's dog.
Yep.
Just like you wouldn't just go down and touch someone's kid.
Yeah.
Right? And if that happened, like you'd be like, what the hell are you doing to my
Right.
kid, right? It's a very different conversation. But for dogs, that line is crossed all the time.
Yeah.
So then that person or whoever is greeting the puppy is creating a habit now, because then every time the puppy sees someone, they're thinking, I'm gonna go to the stage and then end up peeing.
Right.
Right? So part of the issue sometimes is what's the environment of it?
Yeah.
Okay? Now, we can still correct him and teach him that even when he sees someone excited and they're excited to see him, he still can't jump.
Yep.
Okay? But in the beginning, I make it easier so that people can kind of learn what the exercise is, and then we make it more complicated so that he can fit into the space
Right.
and still be well behaved.
Right.
Make it easier on him as he learns.
Right.
Correct. Right?
That
And
makes
it-
a lot of sense.
And sometimes it is, partially controlling the environment. So like, I get clients who have family come over and they reinforce bad habits with their dog, right? And then they complain to me about it. And I go, well, if it was my house, one, I tell them, if you're gonna be in my house, you're gonna respect my rules, you're not gonna touch my dog. Or this is the last time you come over, right? And people have a problem with that, right? It's crazy, but I'm like, this is my dog, my house, my rules.
Right.
And if you're not gonna respect those rules, then you're not a friend of mine, you're not gonna come over, right?
Right.
And I get this with like people's parents a lot. And I'm a hard ass. I'm like, well then my parents don't come over. I'm like, respect my rules, because then it comes down to the dog. Right? Everybody starts blaming the dog. I'm like, no, but what about the people that are coming in and blowing off your rules?
Right.
If it wasn't for them,
Make
it's
it
going to be a
impossible for
problem.
the dog.
Right.
Exactly, right? So that's where things start to get complicated.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, and I always tell everybody, your house, your rules. I don't care what you end up doing at the end of the day. But sometimes those are hard conversations that people have.
I think we have no problem being.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the
And
two of
our
us have
friends
no-
would respect it too. I think we just haven't even thought about, hey, when you come in, don't greet the dog. We haven't
Yeah.
even thought about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, let's say they come in calmly and they're minding their business and he's jumping on them still.
Which he still would do, right?
Yeah, then we absolutely correct, because we're like, hey bud, like, we made things easier for you, you're still doing a disrespectful behavior.
Exactly.
Then we absolutely do correct them, right? And then we shape it into other stuff.
Yep.
So this is the brain here, getting tired of being still. So then I just reinforce, okay? Questions so far?
It all makes a lot of sense.
It's making
And
a
it's
lot.
things, like, it's concepts that we've talked about but not really understood, and like how to implement it and what's the right, like, these are all things that we know that we need to implement. We just didn't have the tools or the resources or the knowledge to do so.
I think to your point, it's an education component with us moving forward, right?
Mhm.
Teaching us how to speak his language, teaching us boundaries, things like that. But I also agree with everything you said around the e-collar and stuff like that. So it makes a lot of sense.
Sure,
Yeah.
good. So with the e-collar, like here, you see I'm like, this is what I would call a direct approach. Because I'm directly correcting them for the behavior. With the e-collar, the approach that we're doing is indirect, okay? So,
Tiny.
it's indirect, because he's been doing this for a period of time, right?
For
So
4
now
months, yeah.
he's here and I'm confronting him. That's why for me, this isn't a problem,
Yeah,
because this is what I would expect,
right.
Yeah.
right? Is if I had him for like a couple of days, this would go away.
Yep.
Because he would have so much influence for me, I wouldn't get this anymore.
Yep.
Okay? So,
He's vocal.
yes, for the e-collar, we would do more of what I call the indirect approach.
Okay.
So the discipline behind the heel, correcting him, essentially biting him, removing options,
Yep.
would turn into him just being chill.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how that typically works.
Yeah.
So that's why it corrects like 70% of the behavior.
Correct, right. So then here, let's say we did the e-collar and he we did the e-collar and he was still like this, okay? It didn't do its job. Then we do a direct approach, but with the e-collar, which would be similar to this, but I would be pressing a button instead.
Yeah.
Okay, so my physicality here is I'm using my hand and the leash to give correctional pops. And you see how he puts his mouth here?
Yep.
Doesn't like.
Yeah, that's protest behavior. And this is technically okay in his world. So if a dog bit him to correct him, it's only fair that he can bite back. And then it becomes what we call a dominant scuffle. Okay?
Is that what he's trying to do right now with you?
Correct. Yeah.
Assert dominance?
Yeah.
And now he's mouthing.
Yeah, it's okay. This is his dog.
He's speaking to you right now,
Yeah.
basically.
So here, in his world, if I bite him, it's only fair that he can bite back.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Respect isn't given, it's earned.
Right.
In our world, respect is taught. You respect your elders, you respect firefighters, police officers, so on and so forth. And we can just apply that,
Yep.
not to him. Okay? So when I'm doing this and I'm correcting him and I'm putting my hands on him and stuff, I'm telling him, you're gonna respect my rule and you're gonna settle.
Yep.
And he goes, well, make me. Okay?
Mhm.
Now the tool that I'm using here, because it's a slip leash, it's a correctional tool, but it's like the least of the aversives.
Yeah.
Because it's just a blunt, flat force.
Right.
We have prong collar,
Yep.
which is that one mimics like a dog bite, and then there's e-collar.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, I know I deal with this stuff all the time. Again, I'm not surprised by it. Okay,
Okay.
e-collar is much easier than this.
Yeah.
Okay, so the more you practice discipline and you reinforce rules and you reinforce what you can't do, other things start to go away.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work. If it doesn't work that way, then I would use the e-collar to correct them here.
Yeah.
That would be a direct approach. That's actually exactly what we did with Milo, because when the owner was standing still, he would start to escalate again, kind of like what he's doing here.
Mhm.
But instead of yanking and pulling on the leash, they were just using the button, and they kept raising the intensity, and so finally they found a number that he didn't like and was able to shut him down.
Like where he basically said you win.
Correct.
Okay.
Right? So he bites back, I bite harder.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how that
Being
works.
submissive almost.
Correct.
Okay.
Right?
Mhm.
So, questions on any of this stuff?
I don't think I have any.
No.
It makes complete sense.
It does, yeah. And like,
Even watching you, the way that you're talking about how he's reacting to what you're doing makes so much
yeah,
sense.
it's clear that I can understand the language you
Yep.
guys are communicating, and I don't know how to speak it yet, but I
Right.
can tell that you guys are having a dialogue.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right, and he's
Yeah.
going, I wanna be a brat, and I'm saying you can be a brat,
Exactly.
right? So, things have changed a bit with COVID and stuff, obviously this is why we're here with masks and whatever. Everything's verbal instruction now,
Okay,
okay, which actually, in my opinion, is way better than what it was before.
okay,
Because before, I would work with him, you would watch, then I'd hand him to you, and then I would coach you through, right? So the reason why that was nice was because the owner had a visual first, before they did anything, right? But I would actually do a bulk of the work. Okay, so e-collar progresses very quickly. So like, let's say when I work with couples, let's say, actually for example, I had another Bernedoodle, his name's Gus, that just finished not so long ago.
okay,
The husband is like 6 foot something, the wife is like 5'1" or whatever, right? And it's a pretty solid dog. And she decides she wants to go first. And I was like, good luck, because I know how this is gonna be.
yeah,
The dog was yanking her all over the place, right? Now finally, with the training, we got him locked in, he was being mindful, we fixed all that, right?
yep,
So then we go, let's swap handlers. She gives the leash to her husband, and she's like, ha ha ha, good luck. And I said, actually, you just did all the work. And as soon as he started walking the dog picked up right where she left off.
wow,
So once you get over that initial hump of the learning process,
Yeah.
it's super easy.
It's basically like, once he realizes that no matter how much of a stink I throw or whatever, I'm still probably not going to win here.
Correct.
Once he gets that ingrained in him, the commands or whatever, the behavior begins to change faster. Is that-
Correct.
and then it's
Yeah.
up to us to be consistent with it.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. So in the beginning, there's a lot of training,
Yep.
but then as he gets conditioned, all that starts to go down, and then when you apply it, so the best form of training is applied valve training. Okay. So when you take him out on a 30-minute walk, he would be in a heel as opposed to doing this.
Yep.
So if you're doing that every day, 2 times a day, you're practicing the heel.
Just naturally.
Yeah, naturally.
In that, and, yeah.
So as soon as we learn the skill, I tell people start applying it to life.
yeah,
Okay, and then that's why we build reliable obedience, because most places go, you train here, spend 15 minutes training, and then they hope it transfers to life.
Yeah.
It's not how it works.
yeah,
You have to apply it to life in order for them to learn, oh, heel means heel, no matter if I'm walking across Travis, if I'm walking through a dog park, if I'm walking through a farmer's market or a Petco. Heel means stick to my owner and follow their every move.
Yep.
Okay? And I don't care what the environment is, you know? So then like the concern is, well, if we're training at my facility, right, that we don't have the distractions of outside. So in the summertime, we were working at Oz Park,
Right.
which was great because the Oz Park is crazy busy, right?
yep,
And at the end of every class, we were getting the behaviors in that setting. So the owner's like, wow, like, because they learned how to make it work in a realistic environment.
Right.
Okay. But then, because it's getting colder, winter's coming south, people have been opting to come here. So then for them, their concern is, well, how is this going to transfer to my home? And I go, it's just a number. So our remote goes 0 to 127. Let's say when we train here, it's like 35. Okay, that's the perfect number for him. He's being compliant, everything's smooth. But then when you go home, he's not listening to 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. I just keep going up until I find the number that's going to make him listen in that environment.
got it,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
Because if you're training in a quiet neighborhood versus when you're training and you're outside of a dog park, 2 different environments, right?
Yep.
That you may need a higher number to
Correct.
make him
Yeah.
respect the command.
Yep.
It's super simple, okay? So once you understand it logically, you're able to just kind of go to places and then just adapt to them.
Right.
And that's the main thing I teach people too, is just how to adapt to a situation. Because life is gonna throw stuff at you potentially. Like I've had people's dogs take off because of fireworks, or take off after a squirrel that they didn't see themselves, and the dog is, very prey driven and just taking off. Is how to think on the fly, right? Like, oh, my dog's running away because some jerk decided to set off a firework randomly in the middle of October, right? How do I make my dog return? You have this tool. Because in that moment, it's not about recall. Because he's running because he's scared, right? He's running away because he thinks there's danger.
Mm-hmm.
So calling him back to that is against instinct.
Yep.
So technically, you have to make him more scared of running from you and the remote than he is running from the fireworks.
Yeah.
So yesterday, when we let him off leash at the dog park and he was running around and we couldn't catch him, that's where we probably would have turned it up higher and pressed it, especially as he's like darting towards the old woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because that's an emergency situation, right?
Yes.
It's just like, boom, I need to stop this.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Now, so obedience kicks in during your average life, right? The day in your life, where it's like, I'm at Travis, things like that. And if you catch it early enough, it's a quick recall, because there's nothing really driving him. But if something happens and he's scared, that's where they get stuck. Because people always train for what they think life's going to be like most of the time.
Yep.
And I train for that 0.01% that you might get with your dog. Because if you can do that, everything else is easy peasy.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it happens, and I actually put a video up on my YouTube channel where I refer to it as train for the day Eagle never comes. And they were here training in my facility, and the dog took off running towards our play area. And they had the dog on a leash, dog can't go anywhere and stuff like that. But the owner was doing all the wrong stuff. And then at the end of that, we make the dog comply. And I stopped him and I'm like, let's talk about what just happened. And they go, how did you feel? And he goes, I was freaking out, I didn't know what to do. And it was a very simple, easy context. There is no danger to the dog.
Right.
But he still freaked out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you freaked out with this kind of setting. I was like, imagine if you're in this kind of setting.
Yeah.
And so the reason why, because I could see they felt bad, because the dog was yelping and stuff. I'm like, the reason why I had to do that is because this is controlled context. There's no fear of your dog getting away. But in life, when there's no leash and something happens, that's going to be a very real possibility.
He ran out of trebs with him, and he could have gotten hit by a car.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was a freak out moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having that many, that was a freak out moment. Yeah.
Dog training gets more deep, if you will. But people talk about it like, oh, it's just your dog does tricks and your dog should be happy and your dog should enjoy life and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but then shit happens, and like,
Yep.
you want to be, if you're prepared for that, everything else is easy peasy.
Exactly.
Okay, so for this guy, 2 classes on the heel, we see what that fixes. Minor problems like this are very easy to address because it's one consequence for things that you don't want.
Yep.
Okay, so for me growing up, I was raised old school. If I didn't do my homework, if I talked back to my mom, if I went out without permission, I got a spanking for each of those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? One consequence for a multitude of behaviors, and then when I got older, it was like other types of consequences, right?
Right.
For the dog, the only consequence they understand is physicality, right? So if he's doing something that I don't want, like, so right now my physicality is the leash pops,
Yep.
right? But his anxiety or stimulation right now is further along than where my leash pops are,
Yeah.
okay?
He needs something stronger.
He
is
needs
what
a
you're saying.
firmer
Yeah.
correction, right? So then I could escalate to a prong collar, and then I might see the prong collar has a cap, and then I go to the e-collar, and
Yeah.
in my opinion, e-collar has no cap.
Yep.
And everybody has a breaking point, okay? But e-collar can whisper, and it can scream,
Yeah.
right? 0 to 127. You pick the number, buddy, because I'm gonna find a level that's gonna make you go, like, you know what?
It's to your point, it's up to him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's up
We
to
don't
him
think-
where he submits a little. Of
Yes.
Like, okay, I'll follow your rules now.
Right, if I can get him to be super quiet at 8, then I'm at 8. But if I have to be at 88, I'm at 88,
Yeah.
okay? So
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions?
No.
No,
So first 2 classes would be all focused around heel
Leash
and kind of
Obedience.
finding the number.
Correct,
around
yeah, so that gets you, it's something that you do every day with your dog, you
Yep.
can practice multiple times a day,
Yep.
and it actually, again, helps fix most problems. If everything is going great, starting class 3, we go into recall, okay, because recall does take people the longest. Heel is the fastest thing that people teach, because you walk your dog multiple times a day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Recall tends to take people longer, because it requires you to go somewhere, right, so you happen to be by Trebs, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's convenient for you, so you have somewhere to go to practice regularly. But the issue would be like, how often is it gonna be realistic? How often are there gonna be other dogs there for you to practice?
Right.
Okay, and then we have we have a long leash.
He's so disappointed.
But you see out here, if I do a firm pop, see this?
Mm-hmm.
So this is not addressing this, because he's still focused.
Yep.
With e-collar, what you would see is this would go to this,
Yeah.
Turn to you.
because
Yeah.
I'm breaking this.
That physicality doesn't break his focus or
I
stimulus.
can
from
see
over there.
this cap that you're talking about, like
Mhm.
right here.
We have it on our own blocks.
Yeah.
Where we're like, you know, obviously the power
We
pop.
pop, we try and correct,
Mhm.
and we're very consistent about popping it, cap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that doesn't. That's.
Yep, and we have
it
a
doesn't
different-
break his
Right.
focus on whatever he wants
Yeah.
to do.
That's what makes so much sense now, and you talking about that, because it's like, no matter how many times I do that, why is he not getting it? It's because it's not enough for him.
No.
Yeah.
If he's at a 10 and you're at a 3,
He's like, oh, I don't care.
correct,
Yeah.
right? E-collar.
This
closes
is a
that
speed
gap.
bump for him.
Yeah.
It's on a stop sign.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Right.
Yeah.
Because dogs bite each other.
Yep.
That's how they relate discomfort, is dogs bite each other,
Right.
okay? So when you're able to get close to the discomfort of a dog bite, that's when you start talking dog,
Yep.
okay? And like here, even though I'm doing firm corrections, my energy is, I'm not yelling, I'm not
Mhm.
frustrated, I'm not screaming or anything like that.
Right.
Same with e-collar, removes that frustration, because everything's at the press of a button, and then what happens is people, because it's I would say, it actually works,
Yeah.
their frustration goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't raise your
frustration,
voice.
yeah.
You don't lose it. You don't.
That's
yeah.
part of the reason too, I think, why we're here, is because we get so frustrated and it feels like we're banging our head against the wall.
Mhm.
And I don't want to feel that way. I want to have more patience, but I also want to see the behavior corrected. So that I feel less
Yeah.
frustrated.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah.
So, it's, it's a number of things that just kind of work
It's all
together.
intertwined.
Yeah.
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 We do.
This is, again, pretty standard stuff, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 on the heel, see what that addresses. If you're struggling with this still, whatever, it's a very easy concept. I start talking to you about how to use it as an aversive.
Yep.
Okay? Class 3, most likely going into recall. Takes the longest to teach, so don't think by the time you're done with the program you're gonna have a great recall. You have to practice it to build it, but I give you all the information to
Right.
make it realistically applicable, okay?
Right.
Recall has to be off-leash reliable. Everything else does not have to be off-leash reliable, okay? Because if he's running towards something, chances are he's not gonna have that leash on.
Yep.
You need that
Mm-hmm.
to be applicable. Everything else is kind of, like you said earlier, superficial,
Yep.
okay? So we do 2 classes on heel, 2 classes on recall. Classes 5 and 6 can be what you pick, right? So if it's like, Jesse, everything's going great, what else can we learn? What I teach for stationary controls, the place command is the easiest command, which is go to your bed, don't move. Okay?
That is needed for like when we eat.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, and like he knows his bed. He was like, he has that recall pretty well, and we say stay. It's just a matter of how long until he breaks that.
Yep,
Sure.
because he doesn't have,
Yeah, there's no consequence to him not staying. Like, honestly,
Exactly,
there's
exactly.
0 consequence. It's us saying no and yell and raising our voice maybe, and then telling him to go back. And it's
Mhm.
like, whatever, I can do this. He's like, I can do this all day.
Correct.
Like,
well, he's
So-
reactive, he's not proactive.
Exactly. So then when you say that, right, you tell them no because you're trying to enforce something. But the way it works is growing up, if my mom said don't do that, initially it was just don't do that. But then it was don't do that and I got spanked.
Right,
Now don't do that had a totally different meaning,
right.
yeah.
right? So once you start applying physicality and he's like, whoa, like breaking the position of place, whatever,
Yeah.
comes with physical consequence. Oh, yeah, I don't want to do that then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and then people try to make you guilt you and they say, oh, like you can't train your dog with fear. Like,
That's
technically,
how I was trained.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
Like,
Same.
Yeah.
it's the intention.
Yeah.
So I got spanked growing up, but the intention wasn't to hurt me.
No,
It was to teach a lesson, right?
exactly,
Sure.
to show the consequences.
Yes. So the world is starting to veer away from that thought process. It's starting to move toward, like, even with kids now, like, you can't spank your kids.
Right,
Right? And I'm just like, even for, like, and that's why kids are so bad now. And I've had clients that are teachers who left teaching because they go, nobody disciplines their kids.
Right.
And then they come to school and they expect the school to discipline them. But if the kids don't even respect the parents at home, they don't respect the teachers at school.
Right.
And how am I supposed to teach them if they're not being quiet.
Right.
You know, so they spend more time disciplining than they do educating.
Right.
And so it's crazy because in my world, when I see this stuff, and you know, it's constant where people like their families like talking down to them because they're like using a prong collar on their dog and stuff, but their dog is like off the walls. You know, I'm like, no, like you absolutely need to.
Right.
They just don't understand it because maybe the dogs that they've had weren't like that or easily corrected.
My mom is gonna say that.
You know, so yeah, it's interesting, but it's just
and to the point like we were talking about where like he knows go to bed and he knows to stay there, and he learned that through positive reinforcement because he goes to the bed, we give him a treat. He goes to bed, and but you know when we want him to stay when we're having a meal. How do you positively reinforce it? You just keep throwing treats your entire meal at him until he stays?
We also, you can't be giving your dog a million treats a day. It's bad for his health. So
it's like that's the ceiling. We hit that, and like we taught him some. We think like some understanding of concepts and basics and recognition, but it's the changing of the behavior of like, oh, I can get away with all this stuff,
right.
Regardless of.
You've taught them to do stuff.
Yep.
You have taught them not to do stuff.
It's exactly right.
Yeah. So once all this gets into play, it's a pretty straightforward process. The biggest thing that holds people back is the number. They feel bad, you know? So like, I'll have to, and it's funny because I've had dogs actually like bite people and stuff, and the owner will still have a hard time just trying to correct the dog correctly. And, but as long as, you know, because I can only take you as far as you're willing to go, so as long as you follow my instructions, there's no reason why we don't get the result.
Right.
So, because that's the other thing, people ask, like, what's the guarantee of you're going to train my dog? I'm like, oh, I'll train your dog, that was no problem. It's like, but will you go, because if you need to 127 your dog to stop something, I'll do it, no problem.
Right.
But will you do it?
Right.
Okay? So, but this case, pretty straightforward, see this stuff all the time, overstimulation.
You're not worried about him?
No.
Okay.
No.
And we feel, honestly, we felt confident that this is dog training 101, right? You know what I mean? It's like, this is just...
You would think.
Yeah, just like these issues is presented, regardless of what route you go, which train or whatever, like, this is the most, I feel confident these are the most common dog issues.
Overstimulation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And actually, you know, if you, on my YouTube channel, I don't know if you saw any of our videos, so we record everything now, right? So you can watch Winnie the Chocolate Lab, you can watch Winnie the Golden, you can watch Luna, all the videos are up.
Oh, okay.
Winnie's first lesson, the Golden, she took off on us. Because Julie was holding her, and she slipped out of her harness because she saw a dog on the other end of the auto park, and was essentially doing what this guy is doing, but she got so frustrated, she booked it. And then we have class 1, and then she shows up class 2, and it's 180.
He told me verbally said, I have a different dog.
I have a dog that respects me.
Yeah.
Or whatever. It's...
You know, so that's the same thing I would expect here. You know, puppies around this age is very common because, again, people think they can't discipline them when you absolutely can. They're afraid to use physicality.
We have no, I have no
problem.
Using, like, I would say that's not a hurdle for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have no problem like smacking on the nose, using physicality. It's like, that's how you need to express some things, right?
Correct.
So,
I think we'll be okay with that.
Yeah, we appreciate your point of like, it's only going to go as far as we take it to some degree. I think we're willing to take it pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Then there shouldn't be any issues.
Yeah.
So you're in that 6 to 9 week realm.
Yeah.
You know, you guys can talk about it, mull it over. Do you know how big he's going to get?
Not much.
I think he might fill out, but I don't expect him to get much larger.
He's close to 35 now, maybe we'll get to 40.
Okay, so the collar I'd recommend for you, you have 2 choices. One is the Dogtra 2300, which is the same one that Luna's on. It's meant for 70 pounds and under, because he's right at that cusp, and if he fills out, he's going to go a bit over. Because the one for 35-pound dogs and under, do you guys know Ruthie?
No.
Ruthie's like she looks like a terrier, but she's actually a mini golden doodle.
Oh, okay.
But she's on the 280 because she's 35 and under. So then since he's on that cusp, you'd want to opt for.
I think we'd go for the bigger one because he might get.
He might get to 40 to 42.
Yeah.
So he's growing a couple pounds a week now. So.
Yeah.
So there's that one. The other one is the 1900S Black Edition, and Maria will send you this information. The only reason why I suggest that one is that one's actually it's a higher powered one, which means your number would just be lower. But the collar itself is rounded, so it's not so bulky on a smaller guy like him.
That probably makes sense.
Probably, yeah.
So yeah, we'll send you that information. You can take a look at them. They're both equal to him in his size.
Okay.
So like my Chihuahua's been on the highest powered collar. It just meant that his number was really, really,
Low.
really low because
Yeah.
the output is different.
Right.
Okay. So she'll send you that information, get them on Amazon, and then she'll send you the information for the 6 to 9 weeks, and you can just determine what you want to do.
Cool.
And then she'll send you a form. In terms of like starting date and all that stuff, it just depends on your availability and everything. I am leaving town from the 28th to the 4th. So then whatever ends up working for you there.
I think
Oh,
we
yeah, we
wanna
wanna
hit
get
it
going.
right after the holidays, whenever you're back,
Yeah.
we'd be looking to like go.
Go.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, we
So
want to.
then she'll get in communication with you.
Cool.
And then she'll tell you what the calendar looks like, and you schedule, and then it's just.
So
We have a lot of flexibility, luckily.
Yeah, and one point we do want to bring up is he's getting neutered, call it second week of February. I
Sure.
don't know, just in terms of like the progression of things, and so I don't.
We'd actually prefer it to be him to be, you said most of the behavior will be corrected maybe after like 2 sessions, which is great because when he gets neutered, he can't exert all this energy, and I want to be sure that he can stay controlled.
Sure.
I also don't know how neutering plays into affecting your training.
Sure. Or
Not
having, I don't know if that means like a gap there. and
Of
if that-
2
There will be a gap.
Yeah, is that an issue?
Yeah,
or,
no.
Okay, all right, yeah, that just wanted to bring that
So
up.
what we do is I come back, we have our classes, maybe you have 1 or 2. He gets neutered, we put on the calendar, we push him back an additional week. So I wouldn't see you one particular
That's
week,
fine, yeah.
right?
No problem.
Yeah.
Dogs typically heal within 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
You want to keep his activity low because you don't want the stitches, whatever, to
Exactly.
get removed with the glue. Dogs, within the day, are back to their normal selves.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's what we've
Yeah.
heard from
Yeah.
other people as well.
Yeah. So then, it's very simple. Like if you don't want them to be high activity, you could just correct them, which at that point you would have an understanding of how to stop things. He can still go for his walks. You just have to be mindful that if it's snowed out, which at that point it may have been, you have to keep the area dry.
Yeah, we have to get that covering. for
Or
him.
yeah, you can give a covering, or just be mindful of where he goes, and
Right.
so that there's no moisture or bacteria that get into the site and then cause infection.
Yeah.
But yeah, dogs typically heal very quickly in the turnaround time behaviorally in terms of like recovering from the surgery within the day.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, and then
Is it a weekly cadence with you, or
Mhm.
okay?
yeah.
Perfect.
So like, let's say Fridays at 3 o'clock work for you, like Maria would book that and all that stuff, and then that would be your time for whatever period of time you book.
For that 6-week, 9-week period.
Correct. So if you do 6 weeks, what we do is, if possible, we pick a time that works for everybody.
Okay.
I see you once a week. If, let's say you travel and you're out of town for a few weeks, and we hit, so you get priority over each week that you've booked plus 1, so if you do 6, you get 7 weeks of 3 o'clock on Friday is your time, okay?
Got it, okay.
So then, come the 7th week, if you've used up your priority and you traveled or whatever, and you still have 3 classes left, you don't lose the classes, but if I have somebody else that needs to book Friday at 3 o'clock to keep my calendar rolling, Maria will book that time and then just reach
We
out
have
to
to go
you.
patch
And
to
then-
get there.
Yeah,
which is
fine.
Which we understand that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that just helps keep my calendar rolling so I don't get backed out. But you don't lose the classes.
Got it.
Okay. Cancellation wise, we give everybody 1 freebie cancellation last minute. We understand people get sick, things happen. If you cancel outside a 48-hour window, no big deal. We just push back or reschedule. If you cancel within a 48-hour more than that freebie, then it starts to count as a class.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I
No,
don't think so.
no, super clear and straightforward, and I think it's,
We're definitely gonna move forward. It's
Yeah,
just, do we
we're-
want 6 or 9? I think
Yeah,
that's the
we'll talk
discussion
about
we
that.
need
I
to have.
personally don't care. You decide what you want to do. This is an easy case. It's just kind of how much more advanced do you want his training to be,
Yeah.
okay? I think almost everybody, Shadow, Roxy, Nash, I think almost Winnie, the other Winnie, Ruthie did a little bit more. They're all like in the 6-week range.
Got it.
Luna and I believe Ruthie did 9. Okay, Ruthie may have been a potential 6. But most people in the area, just to give you an idea of what
Sure,
6 looks like,
yeah.
Yep.
you can use that as a reference.
Got it.
Cool.
Okay.
Anything else?
I
No,
don't think so.
no,
Okay.
really helpful.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about, like I said, go to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You can literally watch your neighbor's
Right.
fingers okay, to get an idea. But this is pretty standard stuff, nothing out the ordinary. It's just a dog that's with no boundaries.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Sounds good.
There you go.
Thank you so much. No,
You're
this
welcome.
was really, really helpful here, Glee. Hoping
Yeah.
while I get my coat. So then we'll just wait for the email to come through from Maria.